Simon Cowell broke protocol, dropped his microphone, and walked onto the stage. The cameras kept rolling, but no one knew what to do. Producers froze in the control room. The other judges looked at each other in confusion. The audience fell into complete silence. And standing in the center of that massive stage, under the blinding lights of America's Got Talent, was a 17-year-old boy holding a small metal device in his trembling hands. This wasn't supposed to happen. Simon Cowell doesn't leave his seat. He doesn't break the rules. He doesn't walk onto the stage during someone's audition. But on this night, something shattered inside him. Something he had buried for years. And what this teenager said next would expose the most vulnerable moment in Simon Cowell's entire career. But to understand why Simon couldn't speak, why his hands were shaking, why tears filled his eyes for the first time on live television, we have to go back to the beginning of that night. The boy's name was Daniel. 17 years old. Skinny. Nervous. Wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-up shirt that looked like it had been ironed by someone who didn't really know how to iron. He walked onto the AGT stage carrying a small silver box, no bigger than a lunch container. The audience clapped politely, but without energy. They'd seen hundreds of contestants that season. Singers, dancers, magicians. Another kid with another dream. Simon leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. His default position. The position of a man who had seen it all and expected to be unimpressed. Howie Mandel smiled warmly. Heidi Klum waved. But Simon just stared, stone-faced, waiting for Daniel to prove he deserved to be there. "So, Daniel," Simon said, his voice sharp and direct. "What do you do?" Daniel swallowed hard. His voice cracked when he spoke. "I'm an inventor." Simon raised an eyebrow. The audience murmured. "An inventor? On a talent show?" "An inventor," Simon repeated slowly, his tone skeptical. "And what exactly have you invented?" Daniel held up the small metal box. "This device helps people who've lost someone remember their voice." The theater went quiet. Not the polite kind of quiet. The uncomfortable kind. The kind where everyone suddenly realizes this isn't going to be a fun, light-hearted audition. Heidi leaned forward. "What do you mean, remember their voice?" Daniel's hands shook as he explained. "When someone dies, we lose more than just their presence. We lose the sound of their voice. Over time, we forget what they sounded like. My device records and preserves voice patterns using AI reconstruction. It takes old videos, voicemails, anything, and creates a full voice profile so families never have to forget." The audience didn't know whether to clap or cry. And Simon Cowell sat completely still, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. Howie spoke first. "Daniel, that's beautiful. But this is a talent competition. What are you going to perform for us?" Daniel nodded. "I'm going to demonstrate it. But I need to explain something first." Simon's eyes narrowed. He didn't like long explanations. He liked performances. But something in Daniel's voice made him stay quiet. 3 years ago, Daniel began, his voice breaking. "My little sister Emma died. She was 8 years old. Leukemia. The last 6 months of her life, she was in and out of hospitals. And during that time, I recorded her. Every laugh. Every story. Every time she said my name." The camera zoomed in on Simon. His face was still hard, but his fingers had stopped tapping. He was listening. "After she died," Daniel continued, "I couldn't handle it. I couldn't listen to the recordings. It hurt too much. But my mom, she started forgetting. She'd wake up in the middle of the night crying because she couldn't remember what Emma's laugh sounded like. That's when I realized grief isn't just about missing someone. It's about losing them twice. First when they die. And then again when you forget their voice." Heidi covered her mouth. Howie's eyes were wet. Simon didn't move. "So I built this," Daniel said, holding up the device. "I spent 2 years teaching myself coding, AI programming, sound engineering. I used every recording I had of Emma and created a complete voice profile. Now, whenever my mom needs to hear her, she can. Simon finally spoke. His voice was quieter than usual. And you're going to play it for us? Daniel nodded. If that's okay. Simon didn't answer immediately. For the first time in AGT history, he looked uncertain. Then he gave a small nod. Daniel pressed a button on the device. The theater fell into absolute silence. And then, from the small speaker, a child's voice filled the massive auditorium. Hi, Mommy. I love you. Don't be sad. I'm okay now. It was Emma's voice. Clear. Real. Unmistakably the voice of a little girl who was no longer alive. The audience gasped. Some people started crying immediately. Howie put his head in his hands. Heidi turned away, tears streaming down her face. But Simon Cowell didn't cry. Not yet. He just stared at Daniel with an expression no one in that theater had ever seen before. Because Simon Cowell had a secret. A loss he never talked about. And this 17-year-old boy had just ripped it open. Subscribe now, because what Simon does next will change everything you thought you knew about him. The voice from the device continued. Emma was singing a lullaby. Off-key, the way children sing. Innocent. Pure. And it felt like she was standing right there on that stage. When it ended, the silence was unbearable. No one clapped. No one moved. Even the camera operators didn't zoom. Everyone was frozen, processing what they just heard. Then Simon stood up. It happened so fast that the other judges flinched. Simon never stands during an audition. Never. But he stood, and he started walking. Not toward the exit. Toward the stage. The producers in the control room started shouting into their headsets. What is he doing? Someone stop him! But no one stopped him. No one dared. Simon walked past the judges' table, past the stairs, and directly onto the stage. Daniel stood there, terrified, clutching the device like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Simon stopped 2 feet in front of him. The cameras zoomed in. Simon's face filled every screen in America. And for the first time in his career, Simon Cowell's eyes were filled with tears. He tried to speak. His mouth opened but nothing came out. He tried again. Still nothing. The entire nation watched as the man who had destroyed 1,000 dreams with a single sentence couldn't find any words at all. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Simon whispered, How old did you say your sister was? 8. Daniel answered quietly. Simon nodded slowly, his jaw trembling. I lost my father when I was young. And you're right. I don't remember his voice anymore. The audience collectively held its breath. This was not scripted. This was not planned. This was Simon Cowell, the man who prided himself on being unbreakable, breaking. I spent years, Simon continued, his voice cracking, trying to remember what he sounded like. I'd close my eyes and try to hear him saying my name. But it's gone. It's been gone for so long that I don't even know if I'm remembering it right or just making it up. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, Simon said, shaking his head. You did something I couldn't do. You brought her back. Not physically, but in the way that matters most. He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. The gesture was so uncharacteristic, so raw, that even the hardest skeptics in the audience started crying. And then Simon did something no one saw coming. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. I have old videos of my father, Simon said quietly, his voice barely audible through the microphone. Recordings from family dinners. Birthdays. But I never knew what to do with them. I never knew I could do this. He looked at the small device in Daniel's hands. Could this really work? Daniel nodded. Yes. If you have enough recordings, I can build a profile. Simon stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked back at the judges. At the audience. At the cameras broadcasting this moment to millions of people. And he made a decision. I'm giving you the golden buzzer. The words hung in the air for half a second before chaos erupted. The audience exploded into screams. Heidi and Howie jumped to their feet. Confetti cannons fired. Golden streamers rained down onto the stage. But Simon didn't press the button with his usual dramatic flair. He didn't smile or pose for the cameras. He pressed it gently, almost reverently, like he was honoring something sacred. And as the golden confetti fell around them, Simon pulled Daniel into a hug. A real hug. Not a polite pat on the back. A full embrace, the kind that says, "I see you, I understand you, I know what this cost you." Daniel sobbed into Simon's shoulder. Simon held him tighter. The cameras captured it all. Every tear. Every tremble. Every unguarded moment of a man who had built his entire career on being untouchable, finally letting the world see his heart. When they finally pulled apart, Simon wiped his eyes and turned to the audience. "This," he said, his voice still shaking, "is what talent really is. It's not just about entertaining people. It's about changing lives. And Daniel, you just changed mine." The applause was deafening. But Daniel wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at Simon, and for the first time since his sister died, he felt like maybe, just maybe, her voice would help heal more than just his family. Backstage, after the cameras stopped rolling, Simon found Daniel again. This time, there were no lights, no audience, no producers watching. Just two people who understood loss in a way most people never would. "I meant what I said out there," Simon told him. "I want to use your device." Daniel nodded. "I'll help you. I'll build your father's profile myself." Simon smiled, but it was a sad smile. The kind of smile that carries years of grief. "Thank you." They stood there in silence for a moment. Then Simon did something else he never does. He gave advice that wasn't about performance, or stage presence, or vocal technique. "Don't let people tell you this isn't talent," Simon said. "What you've done is more important than any song or dance routine. You've given people their loved ones back. That's a gift. And it's rare." Daniel's invention didn't just win him a spot in the finals. It sparked a movement. Within days, the video of Simon's reaction went viral. Millions of people watched as the toughest judge on television broke down on stage. News outlets covered the story. Tech companies reached out to Daniel. Families who had lost loved ones flooded his inbox, begging for his help. But more importantly, it changed Simon. In interviews after that night, Simon opened up about his father for the first time in decades. He talked about grief. About regret. About the things we lose when we don't preserve the voices of the people we love. "I've judged thousands of people," Simon said in one interview. "I've heard every kind of talent you can imagine. But Daniel didn't just show me talent. He showed me humanity. And that's something I'd forgotten." The device Daniel created is now being developed into a full product. Families around the world use it to preserve the voices of their loved ones. And every time Simon Cowell hears about another family finding comfort through Daniel's invention, he thinks about that night on the AGT stage. The night he couldn't speak. The night a 17-year-old boy reminded him that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is remember. Years later, Simon would describe that night as the moment everything changed for him. Not just professionally, but personally. He had spent decades building walls around his emotions, convincing himself that sentiment had no place in the entertainment industry. That to be successful, you had to be hard. Untouchable. Immune to the tears and the sob stories. But Daniel's invention shattered that illusion. It reminded Simon of something he'd forgotten, that behind every performance, every audition, every desperate plea for validation, there's a human being carrying a story that matters. "I used to think my job was to find stars," Simon said in a later interview, his voice reflective. "But that night, I realized my job is to recognize humanity." Daniel wasn't trying to be a star. He was trying to heal. And in doing so, he healed me too. The golden device Daniel created now sits in Simon's home office. Next to it is a small framed photo of his father. And on the hard days, When the industry feels too cold and the decisions feel too heavy, Simon presses play. His father's voice fills the room. Warm. Familiar. Alive in the way that matters most. "Hello, son. I'm proud of you." Those words, preserved by a 17-year-old inventor who understood loss better than most adults ever will, became Simon's anchor. A reminder that vulnerability isn't weakness. That breaking protocol sometimes leads to the most profound moments. That the best judges aren't the ones who never cry, they're the ones brave enough to let the world see them break. Daniel went on to launch his company. His voice preservation technology is now used in hospitals, hospices, and homes around the world. Families facing terminal diagnoses record their loved ones. Parents preserve lullabies for children who won't remember them. Grandparents leave voice messages that will outlive them by generations. And every single device carries a small inscription on the back. "In memory of Emma." Because no voice should ever be forgotten. Simon never forgot that night. He never forgot the boy who reminded him why he started judging talent in the first place. Not to find the next pop star or viral sensation, but to witness the moments when human courage intersects with human creativity, and something extraordinary is born. The video of Simon walking onto that stage, unable to speak, has been watched over 50 million times. People don't watch it for the spectacle. They watch it because it's real. Because in a world full of manufactured emotion and scripted reactions, they witness something genuine. A moment when two people, connected by grief, found healing in the most unexpected place. Share this story and subscribe if you believe that real talent isn't just about performing, it's about changing lives. Because this is a moment that will never be forgotten.